Hello everyone, welcome to the Lightning Ball channel. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so and activate the notification bell. Your support fuels my continued efforts. In our last episode, we discussed the story of the creator god, Star King Dragon, Velgrynd. Further details about Velgrynd will be elaborated in upcoming stories of Rudra and Feldway. This episode shifts our focus to the airship, narrating the confrontation between Rimuru's formidable subordinates and Emperor Rudra and his powerful Imperial Guardians. Let's get started. On the deck of the Emperor's airship, the Imperial Guardians' knights stood silently, ready for battle as Rimuru and others approached. The foremost warrior scoffed, declaring that the Monster Federation's defeat was sealed from the moment the Empire seized the evil dragon Veldora. What they didn't realize was that despair was quietly encroaching upon them. Primordial White TenSura felt displeased, fully aware of these soldiers' strengths, and deemed them overly arrogant. Under normal circumstances, she would relish tormenting such insolent beings before letting them die in agony. However, circumstances were different. Rimuru-sama was in the midst of battle, necessitating a swift resolution of any interference. Thus, TenSura decided to grant these men mercy by allowing them a swift death, unleashing her nuclear magic death streak without hesitation. Instantly, a beam of obliteration erupted from TenSura's fingertips. Ignoring all matter, it expanded into a dark orb that enveloped the entire airship. The soul-destroying death streak eradicated all enemies below the sage level, with the previously boastful warriors collapsing, their heartbeats ceasing. Following this, Rimuru and his companions landed on the airship's deck. One Empire Knight, who miraculously survived, desperately struggled, reaching out into the void to clutch at life. But at this point, neither healing magic nor potions could pull him back from the abyss of death. Ultima, witnessing this, joked that it was a waste to kill such individuals so quickly. A slow torment would have been perfect. TenSura then reminded Ultima to stay focused as the enemy appeared. TenSura pointed ahead, where the pinnacle of the Empire resided. At the forefront of the airship, Emperor Rudra sat quietly, with Velgrind's parallel existence collapsed upon him in slumber. Tatsuya Kandu and Damrata stood by Rudra's sides. Behind Rudra, 5 of the single-digit Imperial Guardians stood, their survival through TenSura's death streak a testament to their extraordinary strength. Rimuru, undaunted, faced Rudra, commenting on the honor of the Emperor personally welcoming them. Tatsuya Kandu and Damrata prepared to step forward upon hearing this, but Emperor Rudra stopped them. Rudra acknowledged that of all the pieces he had gathered over 2,000 years, only a few remained, and he accepted Rimuru as a representative of Demon Lord Rimuru for this exchange. Rimuru stated their simple purpose. They demanded the Empire cease all hostilities and surrender unconditionally. If complied with, the Monster Federation would halt their pursuit. If not, they would battle until one side was annihilated. Before Rudra could respond, one of his subordinates, Garcia of the Four Horsemen, could not help but scorn Rimuru and his companions for their ignorance and arrogance, likening them to worms without a sense of their own insignificance. Rimuru remained unshaken, keeping his gaze fixed on Rudra. Eventually, Rudra spoke, dismissively stating his grand ambitions could not possibly end there. Thus, negotiations failed, and Rimur's demeanor turned ferocious, signaling an imminent battle. Just then, the slumbering Velgrynd suddenly awoke, surveying her surroundings. Rudra inquired what caused her such alarm. Velgrynd explained that her parallel existence had been confined by Rimuru, and breaking free from the barrier would take a few minutes, so she had transferred some of her power back in the meantime. This was the moment Ciel used the insulated prison to seal Velgrynd. Xian, thrilled, proclaimed that they could not let Rimuru-sama down. Ultima, astonished, admitted she hadn't expected Rimuru-sama to gain the upper hand against 2 true dragons. With their morale boosted, Rimuru's forces were exhilarated. Even Soei discreetly used a body clone to observe Rimuru-sama's battle. On the other side, the Empire faced significant difficulties. Even the typically composed Emperor Rudra stood in shock, having already held Rimuru in high regard but never anticipating his capability to contend with 2 true dragons. By the time they realized it, it was already too late. Tatsuya Kondo and Damrata, standing by, tensed up, silently prepared to protect the Emperor under any circumstances. Amidst this atmosphere of stark contrasts, Velgrynd confidently smiled and spoke, suggesting that although they couldn't control Rimuru for now, defeating Rimuru's subordinates and using their fates as leverage could coerce Rimuru into submission. Rudra agreed, his firm words steadying his wavering forces. Velgrind's smile, both beautiful and terrifying, promised victory to Rudra. Representing Rimuru's side, Benimaru resolved to annihilate the enemy forces here to prevent future threats. Velgrynd then spread her arms towards the sky, casting the spell 8-gate formation. As its name implies, 8 doors, wide enough for only one person to pass through, slowly descended from the sky, arranging themselves between the two forces. Each door corresponded to one of the Empire's 8 figures, excluding Rudra. Velgrynd explained that the airship was isolated by her created space, and the only way to leave was to destroy all the doors, otherwise, Rimuru's followers would not reach Rudra. Benimaru, intrigued, asked what would happen if everyone entered one door. Velgrynd replied that all could enter a single door, but once inside, only the person who defeated the Guardian could proceed to the next door. In other words, if everyone entered one door and succeeded, only one could challenge the next door. With 8 doors present, except for the last one, this approach was too risky and time-consuming. Velgrynd herself was among the 8 Guardians, and although Rimuru could handle it, Benimaru and the newly awakened others were not yet fully in control of their powers. Only by choosing the last door for a collective challenge against the Scorched Dragon could they possibly win. Velgrynd added that if Benimaru and his group disliked the idea of battling through the 8-gate formation, they could also choose a melee fight. Benimaru, without hesitation, accepted the challenge of the 8-gate formation. Velgrynd was also full of confidence, knowing that as long as she remained undefeated, Benimaru and his companions couldn't escape, thus considering victory inevitable. After reaching an agreement, the Empire's elites entered the doors one by one, with Velgrynd embracing Rudra before passing through the final door herself. As Benimaru's group deliberated on their strategy, Xian took the lead and dove straight into one of the gates, while the rest considered their approach. To verify Velgrynd's claims and gather information about what lay beyond the gates, Benimaru and the Primordial Demon Beauties decided to send their trusted lieutenants, swordsman Agera, magician Esprit, and support Zonda, together through a gate. Thus, filled with fighting spirit, Agera, Esprit, and Zonda passed through the gate. Their adversary was none other than one of the 4 horsemen, the Empire's 5th-ranked knight Garcia, who had earlier scorned Benimaru and his companions as mere worms. Mocking the 3 demon peers as lowly soldiers, Garcia drew his legendary spear, boasting of his skill with a derisive laugh and loudly introducing himself. However, the trio of demons faced him with cold indifference. Agera disinterestedly stated he didn't care for Garcia's name, while Esprit scornfully noted Garcia's audacity in calling Benimaru-sama a worm, commenting that such foolishness would leave him incapacitated for days were it directed at her. Far from being intimidated, the 3 lectured Garcia, who, in frustration, shattered the marble tiles of the arena with a glare. Garcia then launched an attack, to which Agera, hand on his sword, chose evasion over engagement, observing his opponent's tactics. Esprit prepared a barrage of magical attacks using Agera as a shield, while support Zonda retreated to a safe distance to cast healing spells. Garcia's response was laughter, seeing their evasive maneuvers and occasional insignificant magic as signs of fear of his power. Wielding his spear with fervor, Garcia taunted them, proclaiming their inability to win. The ultimate enchantment bestowed upon him by the Emperor Rudra, subjugation conquest, transformed his will to defeat his enemies into strength, making his barrage of insults not just bravado but a means to amplify his power. Unfortunately for Garcia, the demon trio's mission was merely reconnaissance, key to which was Esprit's unique skill, observer. This skill allowed them to communicate with the outside world regardless of time and space, ensuring that every word spoken in the arena was relayed without omission. Agera commented on Garcia's temper, jesting that he still couldn't match Carrera's impatience and simplicity, which he found particularly challenging to deal with. Thus, Agera's words, too, were transmitted to Carrera outside the arena through Esprit, who, delighting in mischief, had not disclosed her ability to Agera, even taking secret joy in his potential slip-up. However, Garcia's subsequent remarks caused Esprit's expression to freeze, signaling a shift in the atmosphere of their confrontation. Garcia's demeanor was contemptuous as he lambasted the demon's masters, claiming to have never heard of the blonde or purple-haired demons, acknowledging only the white-haired one by reputation, dismissing all them three as ignorant and worthless. Garcia flaunted his spear as if boasting of an assured victory, leaving Esprit stunned in place. She hurriedly shook her head, trying to forcibly end her skill while signaling Garcia to cease his tirade. However, Garcia persisted, arrogantly declaring the world did indeed harbor true monsters like Velgrynd-sama and the formidable Tatsuya Kondo-sama, reducing demons and their masters to mere ants deserving of annihilation. By the time Garcia concluded his rant, Esprit had already severed the skill link, but it was too late. Ultima's forehead bulged with veins on the outside, Velgrynd panicked, and Primordial White Testarossa, insulted as worthless and likened to ants, seethed with unprecedented fury. Accustomed to praise since birth, she had never faced such defamation, igniting a nameless rage within her. Rimuru and the others, though seemingly calm, were enveloped in a palpably tense atmosphere. For demons, the manner of killing mattered. An instant, painless death was a mercy they were no longer inclined to offer. Carrera, restless, commanded Esprit to have Agera gruesomely dismember the blasphemous Garcia, then obliterate his soul. Agera and his companions, already seething from the defamation of their master, didn't need Carrera's prompting to be enraged. Yet, oblivious Garcia continued his taunts, belittling the demons as weak as excrement, advising them to embrace death and serve their masters in the afterlife. Despite his fervor, Agera showed no intention of retaliating. Esprit, urged by Carrera's wrath, pressed Agera for action, fearing even her own trembling in the face of Carrera's fury. Agera unexpectedly admitted that his own strength was insufficient to defeat Garcia. Esprit was dumbfounded, knowing such a confession could deeply embarrass Carrera, whose usual jesting belied the grave consequences of embarrassment, potentially scarring the continent irreparably. Agera clarified, while Garcia's conduct resembled that of a stupid asshole, he genuinely possessed the Emperor's ultimate enchantment. Facing the truth that ultimate skills could only be countered with ultimate skills, conventional tactics were futile. However, Agera revealed he had a winning strategy, albeit reliant on Esprit's assistance. Garcia's entire being was fortified by his power, elevating his armor to mythical grade. Penetrating such defense required elevating their own capabilities to a similar level. Agera urged Esprit to place her hand on him, banking on her support for their next move. Confused by his request, Esprit was momentarily lost but chose to trust Agera. Agera stood upright, attuning himself to the voice of his beloved sword, preparing for a daring gamble to transform his will into a blade to vanquish the foe. By combining forces with Esprit at this critical juncture, they glimpsed a chance to break through their limits. Garcia, undeterred, shifted his disdain towards Rimuru, suggesting that Velgrynd must have already slain Rimuru, mockingly proposing Agera and his companions pave the way for their master in the afterlife. This provocation pushed Agera and Esprit beyond their breaking point. Channeling their will to its utmost, they merged with the blade, launching an assault just as a beautiful voice resonated.
Let me fulfill your desire. Sharpen thy spirit, become the blade.
Agera transformed into a gleaming golden blade, a manifestation of the ultimate gift from Ciel, blade transformation. Under this power, Esprit executed a swift drawing technique, producing a platinum blade that split into 8 petals. She delivered the hazy style's supreme secret: cherry blossoms, 8 petals flash. Garcia, utterly confounded by the turn of events, found his armor cleaved as if it were mere paper, his body disintegrated, though not fatally. After the deed, a red soul, resembling a ruby with Garcia's core encased within, preserving even his self-awareness, materialized in Esprit's hand. Reverting to human form, Agera gazed at Garcia's soul with disdain, yet introspection seized him. In that moment, he acquired a new ability, prompting recollections of his past life devoted to mastering the sword. Before his demonic reincarnation, he was Byakuya Araki, whose daughter bore a child, Hakuru, inheriting Agera's swordsmanship. Hakuru, nurturing numerous disciples, most notably Demon Lord Rimuru-sama, carried on Agera's legacy. Although Hakuru's efforts were paramount, Agera found joy in the continuation of his sword art, now indifferent to the trash he had just eliminated. Turning away, he exited the gate. Turning back to Garcia's soul, Ultima decided to punish him for slandering Rimuru-sama. With a naively cheerful smile, she cast a curse on the defenseless red soul, Curse of Annihilation, a potent curse refined by Ultima capable of destroying even spiritual life forms. Consequently, Garcia screamed in agony, but to Ultima, who merely laughed in delight, it was a sign of success. Testarossa, feigning innocence, inquired about the effect, although she well knew its nature. It was merely to make Garcia hear. Ultima cheerfully explained that the curse would continue inflicting pain until the energy surrounding the soul dissipated. Given Garcia's ample energy, this torment could last about thousands of years. At this moment, Garcia began to regret his actions, pondering what wrongs he had committed to deserve such a fate. Testarossa joyfully stated that Garcia had been granted a chance for atonement. Surely he would be thankful to them. Benimaru silently observed the demon's actions, but this time, no one intervened to stop them. Thus, Agera awakened a new skill and regained memories of his past life, while the rashly speaking individual received a millennia's worth of punishment. With the exception of Velgrynd and Xian in another gate, the remaining 5 gates were now open, and the battles continued unabated. Alright, that's all for this video. In this episode, Ciel played a crucial role in turning the tide of battle for Agera. In our next episode, we will continue with the battles of the 8-gate formation, featuring Xian vs Insector Minaza, and Soyai vs Gardener. Unlike Agera, both Xian and Soyai were aware it was Rimuru-sama, or more precisely, Ciel, who was protecting them, especially Xian. Additionally, we will discuss Diablo, Soyai, and Testarossa secretly watching the intense battle between Rimuru and Velgrynd. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support is greatly appreciated. See you in the next one.